I created the scene from the movie John Wick using Blender. The scene was created almost entirely with geometry nodes. Blinds are procedurally designed to allow flexible opening and closing. The abstract geometric sculpture was created, of course, using geometry nodes. Also, this sofa was created procedurally. It's based on a basic simple shape, but the shape has a random offset, which is very convenient to create and customize with geometry nodes. The feature of the interior is this wall art with a stylized sun, which we have in the movie. It's aesthetically pleasing, and the creation of this pattern itself is interesting too. Using geometry nodes, we can flexibly edit and customize the pattern in a couple of clicks. And of course, the floor geometry is ideal for creating in geometry nodes. A more detailed review awaits you further in the video, and the most interesting elements will be posted as detailed tutorials on our channel. So subscribe, like, and let's begin. We'll start by importing the reference and camera. Let's create a cube and move its faces to the place of the walls. Now separate the window and then set the render settings here. We'll set an HDRI map as global illumination. And for direct lighting, we'll add the sun. Let's set it in such a position that the angle of the light coincides with our reference picture. Here we adjust the intensity and temperature of the light source. Next, I created the glass material. And we move on to creating our blinds. Here we mark the columns. And divide the blinds into 3 rows: bottom, middle, and top. We also mark the slats themselves. Let's go to the geometry nodes. The logic is this: on each face, I create a separate blind profile, and I put the angle of the slat's rotation into a separate setting for easy control. I separate the columns. And here we add the slats of the blinds. We create a profile for them. Now we can conveniently control the angle of our blinds. For each tier, we set its own degree of closure. Let's also adjust the fitness of the columns. And this is what we get as a result. Next, I created a small podium that we can see in the reference picture. And now we may move on to creating our furniture. Let's start with the side table, which is a simple cube. Next I move on to creating the sofa. The logic is simple. We create a line that determines the length of the sofa, and along it we distribute other lines, the geometry of our sofa with a specified spacing. As well, with the noise node we control the shifting of the elements and the shape randomness. Here we set the height and add a profile to create volume. Round the corners. Then, remove unnecessary profile geometry. And close the remaining holes. Now we can flexibly customize the shape of the sofa. And as a backrest, I'll add a simple cylinder. Next, adapt the shape to the reference. Let's move on to creating the abstract sculpture. We also created in geometry nodes. These are two spheres located one above the other. I experiment with scale and edges, selecting the desired result. Set the abstract form using the noise node. We continue to play with the parameters until we reach a result we like. And here we have such a sculpture, which can be flexibly customized. Now let's move on to creating a floor lamp. It's a simple cylinder from which we get the desired result using the extrude, bevel and scale commands. Create a lampshade. The floor lamp is ready. We create the wall art from a simple plane, adjusting the dimensions to the reference. Set the thickness and make a frame. And to create the sun pattern, go to the geometry nodes. We start creating with a cylinder. Let's add thickness to the polygons and separate them from each other. Using a random value node, I randomly delete most of the segments. Then I duplicate this process. And for each of the duplicates I set a unique thickness. Again, I duplicate the result. This time I add more small edges to increase the detail of the pattern. I repeat the process again, adding even more details. And when creating thickness, I follow the rule: the smaller the area of the element, the greater its thickness. This is the abstract raised pattern I got. You can continue playing with the settings. Add a cylinder in the center to hide the sharp peaks of the rays. And the pattern is ready. Let's set it in the desired position. And using the Boolean node, we'll separate the necessary part of our pattern. Add the same pattern to the bottom using the mirror modifier. Here we create LED lighting. Adjust the emission and temperature of the light. Let's also create the material for our solar art. And we'll also add a couple of materials to our furniture. For the sofa, we'll add velvet material. And add the wall material. We should carefully select the shade of concrete, taking into account the warm light falling on it. We also customize the material details. And we set the correct scale and texture, focusing on the reference. Next, I detailed the geometry of our floral lamp. And set the material. I pay special attention adjusting the material of the lampshade since it has subsurface light dispersion. Now let's move on to creating the floor. Let's go to the geometry nodes and, using the grid primitive, set up the size we need. We select the required rows using the math nodes. And now we extrude them, giving them volume and thickness. Here we set up an arbitrary pattern offset and also add a small noise value for some randomness. Let's add the bevel modifier to create a bevel. And let's set up the floor. I adjust the reflection and add some details. Next, we place our wall decor throughout the room, as in the reference. I create a copy using the mirror modifier. And I set the right position. I'll start creating the table with a cube. Using basic commands like move, scale, extrude, and bevel, I'll create the first half. Then I mirror it using the mirror modifier and connect these details with each other. I made a table lamp from the floor lamp, duplicating also the light source. Let's assign the blinds material. And add a couple of finishing strokes for the floor material. I also added some more details and got this result. Here I added a skyscraper skyline as a background. I also created a box in front of the sun to simulate a single skyscraper. Added denser fog outside the window, so that the light has somewhere to disperse. The fog will also partially mask the objects. I also added the glow effect in the compositor. And this is the result we got.